What's up, everybody? Welcome back to A People's Historian, the show where we read about half an hour of history together. My name's Jason Kishinev, and we're reading Chapter 3 of Defining Moments in Black History by Dick Gregory. If you enjoy the episode, hit that like and subscribe button, and let's dig in. The assassination of Malcolm X. Malcolm X and Richard Pryor had something in common. They were both so bashful that they'd embarrass you. They'd pull their heads down, couldn't look up at folks. Malcolm X, you would not believe this was the same man who stood before black leaders and spoke truth. Malcolm was always polite, saying yes sir and no sir to everybody. Black folks, white folks, little children. And I used to believe he was the biggest fool in the world because he'd memorized a dictionary. I'd say, why not just carry a dictionary in your hand? Malcolm, touch your hand, I'd say. Now, if you could open your head and touch your brain matter, it's soft as cotton. So if you wouldn't carry a dictionary with this kind of skin you've got on your hand, why would you put it in your damn head? Malcolm called me the day they killed him. But let me back up. The first time he called me, he said, Dick Gregory, it's Brother Malcolm. He said, we'd like to know when you can come down to the mosque. I said, what time is it now? Turned out to be 11 o'clock. I said, send a car out here. In about half hour I should be dressed. He said, okay. Then he called back. He said, man, I'm sorry. You can't come out here tonight. 99% of your audience is white. Meaning that if my audience knew I was hanging around with him, they wouldn't be my audience anymore. I said, Malcolm, send a car out here to pick me up. Bring me to the mosque and we'll stand in front of the mosque and take a picture. And I want it on the front page of Muhammad Speaks. And he did it. Still, I mean, he was just bashful. As I was saying, Malcolm called me the day they killed him. February 21st, 1965. He said, Brother Greg, you coming by today? I said, Malcolm, I love you. I love you so much, I didn't even want a chance to be there. Because I knew the government was going to kill him. He said, what do you mean, Brother Greg? I said, well, I close tonight at Basin Street East. But I had my wife book me a flight into Chicago at 8 o'clock this morning. And I had them book me into a college about 10 miles from the airport, way beneath my salary. And I'm going to go there and speak this afternoon, and I'm going to stay there until they tell me you're dead. Because I'm not going to let this government get two of us for the price of one. And I'm going to call Adam Clayton. Excuse me. And I'm going to call Adam Clayton Powell when I finish talking to you and beg him not to go there. Because today the United States government is going to get you. Then I went to Chicago and I was there when they came and told me that Malcolm had been killed. Malcolm was killed because of another brother, Pio Gamma Pinto. Pinto was born in Nairobi, Kenya. He's the one who changed Malcolm's views from black nationalism to Pan-Africanism. He's the one who persuaded Malcolm when he went to Mecca and stayed 7 weeks to meet with all the real leaders of Islam. He was also the one who discussed with Malcolm bringing American racism to the steps of the United Nations. And 4 days after Malcolm was shot dead in New York City, Pinto was gunned down in Nairobi. 4 days. So don't tell me that black Muslims killed Malcolm. Now let me show you how this white racist system treats black folks. When the black folks the government hired to kill Malcolm got ready to do it, Malcolm was standing on a stage at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem. They threw a smoke bomb in the back. When the commotion started and everybody was going this way and that, the brothers ran up with double-barreled shotguns and shot up at him. Under the Freedom of Information Act, we were able to get the autopsy of Malcolm, and all the bullets in Malcolm were going downward. That means the government had such a low view of those black folks that they didn't even give them real bullets. They gave them blanks. Malcolm was shot from above. Also under the Freedom of Information Act, we found out the CIA had been forced to admit that it had rented the Audubon Ballroom a week before. CIA agents went in and put those guns in there and shot Malcolm from a downward angle. That's what this game is about. It's all lies. You know the story about when somebody drove a car by and firebombed Malcolm's house? Now, how are you going to throw something that far from a car without stopping? And then the BS when you heard them say, yeah, we're looking for a green such and such car, license plate, blah, blah, blah. The thing that hurt me was that Malcolm started carrying a gun. I said, Malcolm, you're fixing to mess up your legacy. You're not going to win. Ain't nobody going to give a damn what you say, and it'll be 1,000 years before it sinks in. The message has got to go from a mother and a father who were scared of you to some children who won't be scared of you, and then their children, and their children, and their children. But Malcolm lived a good life. The Spike Lee movie about him with Denzel Washington did not portray that. That movie was an insult. Malcolm's wife Betty raised her children and all while earning a master's degree and a PhD. The movie didn't have room to tell you that, but it had room to show Malcolm snorting cocaine and having sex with a white woman in a car. It also showed Malcolm putting his head in a toilet. Shameful. If Malcolm went wrong early in life, he had a lot of help doing it. He was born in Nebraska in 1925, and when he was just 6 years old, his father was run over by a streetcar. Most likely he was thrown under it by a white man. That tore up Malcolm's mother so bad that she ended up in a mental hospital. Malcolm didn't really have a home after that, and he bounced among foster families until he moved to Boston to live with his sister. And yeah, Malcolm turned to crime after that. At first he had done well in school, but then a white teacher told him he couldn't be a lawyer because he was black. Malcolm lost interest in school after that. Wouldn't you have? So in Boston he started doing a little bit of everything. Pimping, selling dope, breaking into people's houses. That's what landed him into prison. And prison is where he learned about the Nation of Islam. By the time he left prison in 1952, he had become a follower of Elijah Muhammad. A couple of years after that, he became the minister of Harlem Temple No. 7. Around the time Malcolm started rising in the Nation of Islam, the civil rights movement was getting off the ground. But Malcolm didn't want anything to do with it because to him the movement was trying to integrate blacks into a corrupt, racist society. And he thought black folks would do better on our own because our traditional values would have enabled us to thrive. Importance of community, love of family, and the like. He wanted black people to believe in ourselves and be proud of ourselves the way he was proud of us. For black people who had heard all their lives that they weren't anything, Malcolm's words were like food for the soul. He knew we needed it, just like he had needed it. What he communicated to black people was, it's not right that you've got to suffer like this. Malcolm was saying to us, love yourself. Stand up for yourself. That's why he moved people so. And so bashful as Malcolm was one-on-one, you put him in front of a mic, and that was one charismatic brother. He could talk. He could preach. Then he began to separate himself from the Nation of Islam, partly because he was disillusioned by Elijah Muhammad, and partly because he wanted to be more of an activist than he could be with the nation. After he visited Mecca in 1964 and met Pinto, he changed his mind about a lot of things. He no longer believed all white people were devils because in Mecca he saw them praying next to black people, all of them worshiping God together like brothers. He also realized we needed to band together with black people worldwide as well as in America. That's what Pan-Africanism is. When he came back to America, he formed the Organization of Afro-American Unity. He was getting ready to do some big things. And that's when they killed him. Here's what they couldn't kill, though. The inspiration that brother gave to black folks. A whole lot of people still read Malcolm's speeches, and his autobiography, and both give them hope and direction. When they check out the autobiography, they see somebody who went wrong here and there, like maybe they have themselves, but who turned himself around and learned to value himself, to see his own potential. For folks who hear 100 different ways every day, they don't matter. That's a powerful message. Malcolm was the messenger black folks needed. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. Here's the story they tell you about James Earl Ray, the man they say killed Martin Luther King Jr. They say he escaped from the Missouri State Penitentiary in Jefferson City. Now, never before James Earl Ray, and never since has anybody ever escaped from that place. Not even Houdini could have done it. And James Earl Ray was so dumb that he had never committed a crime and not been caught by the cops 30 minutes after he did it. But for almost 50 years they've been saying that this ignorant white boy escaped from the most secure prison in the country and pulled off one of the crimes of the century? Yeah, tell me another one. Here's how it happened. And here's how dumb James Earl Ray was. He's in Missouri State Penitentiary, and another white boy, who was part of the real group planning to kill King, walks up to him and says, "Hey, James, how'd you like to escape?" Ray tells him, "Yeah, when we going?" "We're not going. You are," the boy tells him. And Ray went for that crap. That was 1967, the year before King was killed, and Ray was working in the bakery of the penitentiary. They cooked the bread for the prison and 100 other places, other prisons, state schools, old folks' homes, places like that. When they were done baking the bread, it went into big metal containers, which the guards then loaded onto the truck. If there was a body inside those containers, those guards wouldn't have known the difference. So on the day of the escape, James Earl Ray was in one of those containers when the truck pulled off. After a while, it stopped on the road near some weeds, and Ray hopped out. Then, to show you how slick this whole thing was, a car just happened to pass by, and Ray got a ride from the same network of people who had sprung him from prison. The same ones that killed King and pinned it on Ray. But they couldn't do that for a while yet. So this criminal genius, this man they say was later responsible for one of the most famous killings in U.S. history. What did he do next? Messed up everything, everywhere he went, everything he tried. Went to Mexico to make porn movies. Now, you don't have to be a great director to make porn movies. Don't need Shakespearean actors working for you either. You aim your camera at folks having sex, or making like they're having sex, and presto. It doesn't take talent. For it to go wrong, though, you need a special talent for screwing things up. And that's one talent that boy had, spilling out his ears. Later, he applied his unique messing up abilities to being a bartender and even a dancer in Los Angeles. Finally, after somebody else killed King, James Earl Ray made his messing up way to Canada and then England. And that's where they nabbed him and pinned King's murder on him. Incompetent as he was, the only way he could have killed King was by trying not to do it. But this was the dimwit the government sentenced to 99 years in prison for killing the man it wanted to see dead anyway. The man the government itself had killed. Now check this out. The Lorraine Motel, where King was killed, was nothing but an old whorehouse. What happened was, when King and his lieutenants went south, they had to stay in white-run hotels because the local people were scared they'd lose their jobs if words got out that King was staying with them in their homes. So King stayed at the Crown Plaza, the Holiday Inn, places like that. At this time, J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, was trying to discredit King and mess with him any other way he could think of. When Hoover saw where King was staying, he got the word out to black folks, acting like he was their friend. With friends like him, black folks could have had an enemy garage sale. Hoover said something along the lines of, "To my dearest friends, the Negro people in Memphis, the lying Reverend Martin Luther King had told you to boycott white businesses, and he himself stays at the Crown Plaza Holiday Inn." That meant that King had to move out of the Crown Plaza and into the Lorraine Motel. Now, the black woman who operated the switchboard at the motel, they say she died from a heart attack when King got shot. How'd she know King had gotten shot if he was out on the balcony and she was inside operating the switchboard? Here's what happened. They killed her so no calls could get out. Another woman in the motel office said that before King checked in, a man had come and told her King would be there that evening and that he didn't like staying on the first floor. "You put him on the second floor," the man said. So they put King on the second floor where he was going to be shot. Now they have to set up James Earl Ray. They had brought this dummy to Memphis where he thought he was going to kill King. The plan was that the real assassin would do it and then kill Ray to make it look like he'd been shot after killing King. Then they would plant evidence on Ray, but they hadn't taken into account Ray's special messing up powers. He was so powerful that way that he could mess up his own plans and other people's too. At the crucial moment, that nitwit saw that his tire was leaking and went to a filling station to get it fixed. He was still at the filling station when he saw all the cops running around the neighborhood. He got scared, left, and never went back. Later, he got caught at Heathrow Airport in London. Not for killing King, but for the jailbreak. The best part was when they caught him in June, he was wearing a coat. That's the dude they say pulled off one of the crimes of the century. A man so out to lunch that he didn't even know what time of year it was. That's why you have to question everything they tell you. Grace Stevens, the snaggle-toothed, couldn't read, couldn't write, probably black-hating common-law wife of the motel owner, she got put in an insane asylum for saying that the man she saw running from the motel after the shooting didn't look like James Earl Ray. Ask yourself why. And ask yourself this. Ever see the photograph of the people at the Lorraine Motel that day pointing up after the shot rang out? How'd they know where the shot had come from? Let's say you're in a restaurant and a shot rings out. What do? Hit the floor, right? Because you don't know if more shots are coming. But here these men are pointing up like they know what's going on. Why? And while you're thinking about that, think about this. In 1993, a white restaurant owner named Lloyd Jowers came forward and admitted that he had paid a man to kill Martin Luther King Jr. His restaurant was across the parking lot from the motel where King was killed. He got the money, $100,000, from a man named Frank Liberto, who was in the Memphis Mafia. The man Jowers paid was a lieutenant with the Memphis Police, Earl Clark. After King was shot, a cab driver named Paul Butler saw Clark running from the scene. Butler's mistake was going to the police and telling them what he'd seen, because a few hours later, he was as dead as King. What does that tell you? James Earl Ray didn't have a thing to do with killing King, and the plot was bigger than Jowers, Clark, and Liberto. If not, why was Butler killed? Jowers may have been working on behalf of Liberto, and Liberto was part of the Mafia, but what was the Mafia in it for? Why did the Mafia care if King lived or died? Because the Mafia was working for the people who did want King dead. Do I have to tell you who they were? The U.S. government. Think about what King was doing in 1968, the year he got killed. The things he had helped achieve, like the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, desegregation of bus lines. It didn't change the fact that a lot of people were still living in poverty. They didn't have the basic thing they needed, a living. So King had decided to take a new approach. He was organizing the Poor People's Campaign. This wasn't about just civil rights. This had to do with all poor people. Black, white, Mexican American, Puerto Rican, Native American. The plan was to set up protest camps on the Mall in D.C. where the 1963 March on Washington had taken place. Thousands of people were going to occupy the place until they got satisfaction and made a start on getting economic justice. Now, it's one thing when King was stirring up black folks, but if he started stirring up everybody else too, well, in the eyes of the FBI and the CIA, that was going too far. He had become too dangerous. King's family brought a lawsuit together against Jowers. King's family brought a lawsuit against Jowers, and the half-black, half-white jury decided in 1 hour that Jowers had been involved in killing King. Maybe you never heard about any of this. Why not? Because the media doesn't tell you everything you ought to know. And you can't believe everything they do tell you. Okay? If you don't remember anything else from this book, remember that. And if you follow my Facebook page, I've been telling you that a lot. The killing of black leaders. I want you to think about something. Malcolm X was killed in 1965. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in 1968. And Fred Hampton, the leader of the Illinois Black Panthers, 21 years old, was shot to death in cold blood by the FBI in 1969. What did the three have in common, besides being black leaders? At the same time they were killed, they were all reaching beyond the black American community to make ties with other people. That's what the power structure is afraid of. people banding together. And when the power structure is afraid, people die. Malcolm used to preach one thing: black people being separate from everybody else, on our own and self-sufficient. Then he went to Mecca and the experience opened his eyes. He started to see the beauty of making common cause with other people. A man he met, Pio Gama Pinto, born in Kenya, led him to think about Pan-Africanism. Black people all over the globe working together. Then the two of them were killed, 4 days apart. Martin Luther King Jr. was organizing the Poor People's Campaign. He said, "I think it is necessary for us to realize that we have moved from the era of civil rights to the era of human rights. We have moved into an era where we are called upon to raise certain basic questions about the whole society." The whole society. Not just black folks. Next thing you know, he had been shot. Then there was Fred Hampton of the Black Panthers. The Panthers was started in the 1960s by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale to protect black folks from racist police officers. They used to follow the police around, and when the police stopped some black dudes, the Panthers were there to make sure their rights were protected. The Panthers were some badass brothers, wearing their leather jackets and berets. They were all about protecting black folks. But Fred Hampton was starting to move beyond that. He saw that blacks needed to band together with others, and he was starting to make common cause with poor white folk. Go look it up. There's video footage. White, oaky-looking dudes you can picture in Klan hoods and robes, except they're standing next to Fred Hampton saying they stand with the Black Panthers. Next thing you know, Hampton is dead too. See a pattern? Thanks for joining me. Hope you turn into the next episode. Hit that like and subscribe button. See you next time.